All right. Hi, guys. It's Ryan and Maria again, your local Thinky Services team. We are going to do just a short presentation on global warming. Last month, we did a little bit of an art contest on like how to save the earth and how we can do our own small part to help care for our environment. And so we're also, I think there's going to be, and I need to double check with the front office, but I think there's also going to be a big push to do some recycling, to have like recycling bins actually set up in the trash areas and things of that nature. So hopefully as a community, we can start becoming a little bit more eco-friendly. There we go. All right, so oh goodness. So global warming is essentially the long-term process of the Earth's climate getting warmer. In the last year or two, so it's been going on forever since the Industrial Revolution, which was what, in 1920? Is that right? When that started?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So for the last 100 years, it's been getting warmer and warmer over time. But in the last 2 years, I think we've really seen things start to escalate. All the wildfires, especially out west. We've had more hurricanes, more major tropical storms kind of making landfall here in the United States. This summer here in Texas alone, right, this summer was much more mild than usual, which feels like a very backwards thing to think when you're thinking about overall the Earth's temperature getting hotter. But like those changes in long-term climate will have long-term impact. So like the heat dome that settled over Portland and Seattle and that whole area, that was like 110 degrees. It was literally 20 degrees hotter there than it was down here during that time.
Mm-hmm.
And they are not prepared for the heat, just like we in February were not prepared for the winter, right?
Mm-hmm.
That bitter cold that we went through. That's kind of the flip side, right? So yes, if the world is getting warmer, right, it makes sense that everywhere is going to get hotter, but I am not a climatologist. I'm not a climate scientist. I'm not a geologist. I just know that I don't know that we know all of the ways that continued increase in temperature, overall average temperature, how that's going to impact the world as a whole and how the different ways it may impact it. I know that here in this area, we are just now, I think, not in a drought. We've been in a drought for like the last 10 years. Out west, right? Their drought is ongoing and there's no relief in sight. So water supplies are getting worse. I know that even the part of the city that I live in right now, our water pressure gets like truncated. It gets, what's that word? Oh my gosh. They basically turn it down. They buffer it. They turn it down. So like during the day, like during the afternoon and evening, when it's time for like my kids to take baths, like a lot of times, like the water comes out of like a trickle because they're trying to slow down how much water is being used during those high intensity periods of time during the day. High usage, Jesus Lord, my language, like my words are failing me all over the place, guys. In advance. They are trying to reduce the amount of water that's being used during high usage times. And that's just here in the United States, by the way. Like all across the world, we're seeing impacts of global warming. Like I said, bigger earthquakes, bigger tropical storms, droughts, things like the Amazon rainforest being cut down. It's causing, less and less carbon dioxide is being able to be kind of sucked up by those trees because they're just not there anymore. And so more and more carbon dioxide is being released into the atmosphere or is getting into the atmosphere instead of continuing to be part of the process it's been part of forever. Excellent. That was a very excellent statement. I had not looked at this slide that Maria so very kindly put together for me until right now, and I did not plan that carbon dioxide comment right before this slide. So global warming is basically the process of carbon dioxide, the stuff we breathe out, and other air pollutants collecting in the atmosphere that absorbs sunlight and solar radiation that bounces off the Earth's surface. So basically the carbon dioxide gets stuck in our atmosphere and it basically like absorbs the heat from the sun, right? And so it's not as, I guess, likely to be bounced off, right? And so like the overall, like all that carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is just kind of soaking it in. It's the same kind of phenomenon as why in the city it can be hotter than it is out in the country because of the asphalt on the roads. The asphalt on the roads is absorbing the sunlight, and it's so much hotter to stand on than it is to stand on the grass. And so you'll see that same kind of phenomenon there. So here are some of the effects, some of the things I was talking about. Disappearing glaciers, which is early snowmelt, which is increasing water levels in the oceans. Severe droughts are getting worse. We're already seeing the water shortages, especially out in the Western United States. Once again, I don't know about other areas around the world, but I know that this is happening elsewhere as well. Let me shift this. Increasing the risk of wildfires in the American West. Rising sea levels, more coastal flooding. So Eastern Seaboard, that includes like what just happened in New York City last week with hurricane, what was that, Ida? Right, with the subways, like there were all those videos of subways just like water, there's like torrents of water, like waterfalls like falling into the subways. Places like Florida, New Orleans, all these really low-lying areas, right? The flooding is just going to get worse. Houston, for example, is at sea level. And if you've ever been and you drive under a bridge, a lot of times you'll see like the gauge on the side of the underpass telling you how much water there is. And it'll go up to like 8 or 10 feet. Like it's really, when I first moved there, it was one of the spookiest things I'd ever seen because I'm not from a coastal area. Forest farms and cities will have all kinds of new pests. So this is super fun. So with the climate changing and the environment changing, you're seeing wildlife moving in different directions, right? So either you're seeing like reptiles and things trying to get to cooler places because it's been hot for so long, which could mean, snakes in inconvenient places. I was about to say basements, but that's not a problem where we are. But you'll see, spiders and other bugs and insects coming out. We're also going to start seeing more and more of that as more and more like housing is being put up, more and more buildings are being built out here. Like they're losing a lot of natural habitat here in the Austin area in particular, which has nothing to do with global warming, but just a fun little aside when you're thinking about just other stuff coming in. A lot of farms, the heat waves, the droughts, the flooding we had, what was that, 3 or 4 years ago? I don't know if you remember, Maria, where like the entire Midwest was like underwater, like for like a month. Like there was so much rain. Like I drove up to Kansas City during that time and literally I could see like the top of the water in all of the fields in like Oklahoma. And it hadn't rained in like 3 or 4 days at that point. Like it should have largely been absorbed into the soil, but it couldn't because like the soil was so saturated. Fisheries, right, being flooded. So fisheries are where like a lot of like our fish and stuff are being bred, right? Like little fish farms, which in my head like just feels like a childhood storybook thing. Like doesn't seem like a real thing. I'm clearly from the Midwest, not from a coastal area. But the fish can, I don't even know how that works, right? What do they like flow out of like their like enclosed area? I can also see situations where the flooding we had here a couple of years ago where there was so much outside debris that was brought in that would like overwhelm the water treatment plant and like shut the whole city's water down. What was that, 2 or 3 years ago? I think that was right before the pandemic started, right? Like that's another really good example of how this is potentially impacting our lives long term. Oh God, coral reefs, they're so beautiful, but they are definitely being destroyed. Like they're being what's called bleached. So they're dying because the water is getting too hot. They have to have like specific temperatures that they live in. And with the coral reefs dying, all of these species, all the other plants and animals and fish and stuff that reside in those reefs, they're losing their habitats. Alpine meadows, I know almost nothing about alpine meadows, but I assume same thing, right? Alpine, I'm assuming up in the mountains, right? Same thing, right? The animals living there, these are like niche habitats. These are smaller habitats where you have all kinds of what's called biodiversity. So all kinds of different animals and plants living in those very niche, very special places that are being lost because temperatures are shifting too much in 1 degree to 1 degree or another. Humanity is particularly evolved to adapt to changing weather in a climate and climates. Most animals, most plants, most of what like that biodiversity here on Earth, which is anything that's living, is not. Like most of the living creatures here on Earth are not designed to adapt to the changing climates. They're just not. So, you know, driving plant and animal species to extinction is a huge problem, because like you think about like bees and butterflies, my kids and I talk about this all the time, right? They're like, they're the greatest pollinators, right? They're the reason we have so much plant life. And with more and more destruction of like just wildflowers, less so here in hill country, but elsewhere, right, we're taking their food from them, right? The more urban we get, and the more urban we get, the more people are driving, and the more people are driving, more CO2 is being released into the atmosphere, and more CO2 being released into the atmosphere, it's just getting captured in our atmosphere, which is causing the absorption rate of that sunlight coming in constantly increasing over time. Allergies, asthma, infectious disease outbreaks will become more common due to increased growth of pollen producing ragweed, higher levels of air pollution, and the spread of conditions favorable to pathogens and mosquitoes. All of that I think is just super, super true. I don't know that I need to explain anything more about that. We tend to think of colds and stuff as being a cold weather phenomenon. Keep in mind that up in like the pole areas, right, North and South Pole, these glaciers that have been there for 10,000 years or something, they have all kinds of fun stuff like stored in that ice, like just frozen in there, just waiting for an opportunity to be thawed out. And hey, you know, the world's different now, right? Like things that, you know, species, animals were super adapted to and for and against back then, we are not adapted for and to and against now, right? Just we're not, we haven't been exposed to it in 10,000 years. So just one of those things to keep in mind when we're thinking about global warming and kind of unintended consequences, the ways that this may impact our lives that we don't even realize. A really good graphic of a lot of what I've just said.
Yeah.
So please take a look at it. I'll leave it up here for a second. And you guys obviously can pause it, right? This is a video. I don't have to rant for 5 minutes while you guys are looking at a picture. But it is a cycle, and we are caught firmly in a cycle right now. Permafrost is super cool stuff. I don't know if everybody watching this video is going to know what that is. Permafrost is up like in the Arctic areas. It's literally ground that never thaws. Like it stays so cold year round. And what's cool about it is that every now and then scientists have been able to thaw, like they'll take like a section and take it back to a lab and they'll thaw it. And like there are like algae and stuff that are, I don't even know, some absurd amount of years old that like literally come back to like, not come back to life, but like once thawed, like begin living again, like begin actively growing. And so there is a piece of this that's kind of like, you know, we may see some interesting stuff, not just like whatever pathogens may have been frozen in the ice, but also like some forms of life that we haven't seen in a really long time. So how can we help? That's the whole point of this, and why we just spent, you know, I don't even know, was that like 10 minutes talking about global warming and kind of where we are in the world today. Reducing your own carbon footprint. There are some ways to do that. If you are looking for new appliances, refrigerators, washers, dryers, deep freezers, whatever, you can look for the Energy Star label. They meet a higher standard for energy efficiency. When you look for a car, right, buying a smaller car, economy cars, or even the electric or hybrid electric cars nowadays, like, I don't know what their current prices are, but I think the used car market is starting to go back down in price. So it is possible that that stuff is, I know that the technology is getting better in those areas to the point where you can actually drive like an electric car, like across town or across the country or whatever. And it's not, you don't have to like recharge it every other day. Public transportation, carpooling, things of that nature as well. Recycling is super helpful. Like I said, I'm not sure that there are currently recycling bins at Binkies, but it is something that I've been talking to management about, trying to get some bins put in. As far as things you can recycle, paper, bottles. If you're recycling bottles, make sure you're rinsing them out ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
Cardboard, you know, I have found that like half the stuff my kids have that can be recycled. When it comes to furniture or clothes, so clothing can't be recycled, but clothing can be like passed on or donated. I am going to set up like a Buy Nothing account on Facebook for Think East residents, which will allow, you know, if like Maria had a dresser that she doesn't want anymore, she could take a picture of it and post it and be like, hey, does anybody need a dresser? And maybe somebody needed a dresser. Maybe we just had somebody move in and they didn't have one, or maybe somebody has one, but it's, you know, it's been kind of breaking for a long time and Maria's is much nicer. She could connect with her and they can make a plan so that I could, like, if it was me, I could go and like pick the dresser up at like 5 o'clock on a Wednesday. So doing a lot of that, right? Passing on what you have that can be passed on, and trying to reduce your overall waste is super helpful. What am I missing? I feel like I might be missing something big, Maria. Am I missing anything?
What they can use to help, what they can do to help.
Yeah.
Recycling, reusing, they can, like, instead of like buying new things, they can like go to like thrift shopping and like buying reused clothes, and like if they have like a jar of like pickles, don't throw it away. You can like use it for like planting or to like store your buttons or your whatever that you have around, and like
like repurposing stuff.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a great one that I didn't mention. And if you guys have any other suggestions, right, like please feel free to comment like below this video and just let us know, right? Share with your residents, share with your neighbors what works for you. And we are going to keep trying to help move Think East to a place that is just more like I said, eco-friendly as we are moving forward. But every small thing we do, it may not seem like it matters, right? Like you're recycling, I don't know, your old like milk jugs. It may not seem like it's making a difference, but for everything that we're keeping out of the landfill, like if every single one of us reduced our like landfill usage by like 1%, right? Like it's what, 7 billion people reducing their usage by 1%? Like that starts adding up. Right. So just something to think about, right? Even just, and even if you're not recycling all the time, every single day, or like you have a small bin that's filled, like that's fine, right? Like that's just step one, right? Like if you are throwing away some of the stuff and recycling some of it, as long as we're moving to a place where we are trying to do better, I think that every little bit matters and every little bit counts. Here are just some basic resources on global changing and kind of what's going on out there. Please feel free to research beyond this. This is definitely just a starting place. As far as recycling bins in the apartments, like, I mean, I'm happy to reach out to the city of Austin and see if they offer recycling bins for inside of like apartments, right? Instead of just the big bins outside. And I'll reach back out to management and see kind of what's going on with that. Cause I know we had some momentum, but then we, you know, had that shift over in management. You know, the other things you can do are like, if you have an old cardboard box, you can literally use that for recycling. Old soda box, you have an order from Amazon, you know, it's overly big, right? You fold down the sides and you can turn that into a recycling bin, like a specific area for recycling, instead of just throwing it away. Just some initial strategies. And I think is that the last slide?
Yes, I think so.
Perfect. So, I mean, if you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to comment below. In the description, I'll also have my contact information if there's any other questions that you guys have. But I would love to keep talking about this with you guys. And, you know, like I said, this year we're trying to do kind of a big push to start reusing what we have and recycling, because some people, not only is it better for the environment to recycle, reuse, and repurpose, it can also help your neighbors out, right? Like if you have kids outgrowing clothing, right, and you know somebody down the way has a little baby or something, right? Like it is a way to help build community as well. So thank you all once again for sitting with us and watching our video, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Also, if you guys have any other suggestions for videos, please feel free to let us know. We've already had some really great suggestions in just the last couple of weeks, so keep them coming. Thank you guys. Have a great day.